All right. I want to welcome everybody to the Q&A portion of our session. That was such a powerful and important discussion over the past hour, and I'm grateful for everybody joining us and for the incredible panels that we had. For this portion, for the live Q&A, I'm excited to welcome Julia Jackson, who's the founder of Grounded, a philanthropic initiative that convenes scientists, policymakers, investors, and frontline organizations to elevate climate solutions. Julia has also recently launched a new digital climate academy to spotlight cutting-edge solutions reversing the climate crisis. We also have philanthropist Jena King, the founder of the Jena and Michael King Foundation, which focuses on protecting, restoring, and nurturing the cycle of life through regenerative agriculture, soil restoration, and climate solutions. They have a special focus on supporting the youth movement and indigenous leadership. Jena is also a board member of One Earth. And finally, our panelist Zainab Salbi is also back on, and she needs no introduction since she was with us in the prior part. So welcome everybody. Before we jump into questions from the audience, I wanted to hit on a few questions building from our prior discussion. To start with, Julia, I'm hoping that you could talk about what the concept of philanthro-activism means to you.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for having me. I think that philanthro-activism means taking a proactive stance and being proactive when it comes to the climate crisis, and also having a systems-based mindset when you're new to something. Like I was new to the climate crisis coming in a few years ago, understanding that there are people that have been at this for their whole lives and have dedicated so much time and resources to solving this crisis, and learning, listening, and anticipating what those organizations need, I think is really important. And then from a systems-based macro level perspective, understanding what is that, where can I fit in and make a difference beyond my philanthropic dollars? And for me, I saw an opportunity to look at less than 3% of philanthropic giving going to the environment and seeing, okay, why is that the case, and how can we make a difference to radically scale up that pie, and also de-silo and build community amongst environmental organizations, because a lot of environmental organizations are, that in the past seems like they're competing for such a small slice of the pie, when really we need to build community and a strong united front when it comes to reversing the climate crisis. So I think a huge part of philanthro-activism is building relationships as well, feeling some sort of commitment emotionally, spiritually, to the individuals who are on the ground and who have been at this for a while, and asking them, what do you need, how can I help, and how can I help build community? And I think there's a lot we can do, and I think that philanthropists worldwide need to step up their commitments on the climate crisis, because we need way more money coming at this. And also to not underestimate micro donations as well. $5 can go a long way. So just building excitement amongst the people that can contribute even $5, $10 to reversing the climate crisis. I think a lot of organizations appreciate the sentiment of just any money coming to their cause and having impact to turn this around. So realizing we're all in this together. It's not a top-down approach, it's a whole human approach.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. You know, along with kind of the term collective action, I think that the idea of collective philanthropy is a powerful one. A notion of democratizing philanthropy, that every financial commitment to support people who are actualizing the work in the field and on the ground, it counts, and together it adds up to a lot. And it, we're not undercutting the role that people with significant resources need to play in really kind of driving their capital to solutions. But this is a moment for collective action across the board, and that includes philanthropy and supporting efforts on the ground. For Jena, if she's ready, I wanted to ask you. I know you personally, and I know what a passionate climate philanthropist you are. And so I wanted to ask you how and why you are supporting on-the-ground climate solutions through through a philanthro-activist approach. I think everybody would love to hear your perspective on that too.
Well, I want to start by saying I'm so honored to be in this panel, and everything I heard before was just so evoking what I believe. We protect what we love, and women especially protect what we love. And I've been fighting for 2 decades for children's health, climate change, oceans health. And 6 years ago, I learned about regenerative agriculture, and that got me really excited and hopeful. And I've been scaling up my efforts. I've learned a lot along the way. And what I did that was different with regenerative agriculture than in my past giving, that was just really throwing large events and spreading the word and raising funds for lawyers. And I wanted to get involved personally. I wanted to be more of an activist. And so I put together a team to figure out who are the leaders and who are the leading voices and the leading models, and supported those efforts through core science at UC Berkeley and UC Davis and many other universities. And I also learned that it's so important to create communication between scientists and activists, and also scientists and policymakers. And then to really go in with an on-the-ground organizer to coordinate and harmonize all these efforts. And what came out of all these efforts were, I became aware of who I was working with intimately, like Michael Martinez, who was a young teacher who was upset that his students thought that Cheetos came out of the ground, and he was so passionate about composting, but yet he was trying to do this on the salary of his wife, who's a nurse. So I was able to go in and see my funds directly work and to build up his organization, help with many others, to take the compost hubs in LA from 2 to 34. And that's just, one effort, but it was really great to be on the ground. And it's exciting with Regenerative Ag. We've helped fund and develop Comet Tool, which is able now to estimate carbon sequestration from regenerative ag practices. And that work now is informing governments and private sectors and new national farming plan curriculum for the USDA. Excuse me. And also we're informing private sector farming with soil and health initiatives. As an activist, I find that I'm often the first one in, and I'm always looking for partners to expand networks. And that's why I'm really excited that I'm now part of One Earth, and helping to bring this message of the regenerative ag to a much larger scale, to awaken the Western world to understand indigenous wisdom and how to live with nature, and understand their farming practices, and scale this all up in restoring Earth's biodiversity.
Jena, thank you. Something that you spoke to, specifically in the story around LA Compost, is listening to the needs of a leader on the ground who had a very relevant solution that could be scaled across the community of Los Angeles. And in listening to his vision of how this could have an impact, you gave him the resources and the time and the space to build. And a lot of leaders on the ground, they need somebody to listen. They don't need more forums. They don't need more barriers. They don't need more obstacles. They don't need to spend more time in front of their computer searching, hunting down for funding opportunities. They need to be out with the community, bringing these solutions to life. And when they have the backing of philanthropic capital to kind of carry their vision through to a reality, it's incredibly catalytic, and it really creates a lot of change, and it invites in other sources of capital once they've gotten to a certain stage. So I really value and appreciate donors that are willing to listen and to give community-led, on-the-ground-led solutions the space and the time that they deserve. I wanted to also throw a question out to Zainab. You know, I've been listening a lot this week to kind of the dialogue across the climate space, and some people are saying today that the priority for climate grant makers should be investing in unproven technology solutions. But what about the opportunity to drive resources to grassroots community-driven efforts like we've seen today? You know, why does this approach continue to feel rather unseen and under-supported? And what is the opportunity if we actually inspired robust investment in grassroots efforts led by women, led by Indigenous people, and led by people of color?
Well, Justin, first I want to share Jena's excitement of 2 Daughters of Earth being in partnership with One Earth. So thank you so much. Listen, I mean, it's not to deny that technology and we need big solutions. We need major shifts in industry's practices, and technology is part of that. So that is a fact. But we also cannot deny that we cannot deny, let's say, the power of the people. Especially now. I mean, we know that we are living in the era of the people. And we cannot say, we'll wait until we develop these technologies or policies or these mega industries. We still need them to shift. But on the ground today, there are people who are making radical shifts as well. Just literally yesterday, I got a call from an Indigenous community in Canada where there's a company trying to harvest their old growth forest. Now, there are people on the ground doing the fight, and they're doing the fight because it's their own livelihood, it's their own lives, it's their own land. A group in Zimbabwe, a women-led group in Zimbabwe, actually became anti-poaching units, and they've proven to be much more effective than the male anti-poachers. And they became vegan, and they became, regenerative agriculture, and they are on the ground in Zimbabwe. So part of the reason why, as Julia said, less than 3% of philanthropic money is going to, environmental and climate change, and it seems that a lot of it's going to technology. Part of the reason that is 10 cents out of every dollar, every philanthropic dollar goes to women-led efforts. And if you are brown or Indigenous, you get less than that 10 cents, basically, is frankly prejudice. You could be a good person, but your prejudice as in, well, they're not going to give me the data or the spreadsheets, or they may be corrupt, or it is it's unconscious or conscious bias and prejudice that only this way of doing it, the data, the analysis, and all of that is the grounded and effective way to do it. And we went through that route, and we came at it saying, no. These community-led efforts are very tangible, are effective. They know what they're saying, and they know what they are doing, and we need to support them. And it's not either or. We've got to put energies in both. But we cannot dismiss the power of on-the-ground, community-led, Indigenous-led, women-led particularly efforts. And that is exactly why we're launching Daughters of Earth today, is because actually supporting these very women who may not have access to the computer that much, or good English, frankly, to write a good proposal, or networking opportunity, or the way they articulate their vision may not be succinct, with Western understanding. And we need to, the discipline is reversed, is the philanthropic discipline, to see how we can actually look at supporting these communities for all of us.
Anybody could take this question, but what do you think when you envision a more robust, supported movement of people on the ground that are implementing changes across our energy system, protecting and restoring nature, and shifting our ag systems to regenerative, climate-friendly agriculture? When you envision a world where there's plenty of resources and support for that movement, what does it look like to you? Because I think that the possibility of having something different than where we are right now, is something that's important for people to have in their mind's eye and to give themselves space to imagine.
Justin, I actually learned from you how vitally important Indigenous communities are for preserving biodiversity in these bioregions and reaching that 50% of protecting Earth by 2030 target that we need to reach to stay under 1.5 degrees Celsius. So when I think about the future and the future of where I would like to allocate my time and energy, it's empowering boots on the ground, indigenous communities, because 80% of the most biodiverse regions in the world are protected by and inhabited by indigenous communities. And I think we need to empower them because they're the best caretakers, and we don't need to victimize these indigenous communities. I think we need to learn from and honor their wisdom and marry it with modern day technology and Western ways of thinking. And if I look at the future, I would love to see way more indigenous leaders in office positions at these tables and conversations about biodiversity and climate targets, and for us to really empower them to protect the most vital carbon sinks on the planet and drive way more funding to these indigenous communities, like you have demonstrated work so beautifully.
Susan, if I may add, I mean, to this point, it's not only we need to support the indigenous, we need to support people of color, we need to support all of it, but we also need to start, and we also need to speak to the everyday women, not the activist women, maybe not the, maybe not the woman of color. It's the everyday woman, because what we found before we launched Daughters of Earth is that everyday women of all colors, of all ages, from grandmothers to their granddaughters, they are itching and saying, I want to do something, and don't tell me just to recycle, I want to do more, basically. And you've got to, almost not patronize the population, basically, the everyday population. We need to invest in showing that there is possibilities to act no matter who you are and whoever, I mean, a middle-class woman in America, for example, a middle-class white woman in America is as important for me in engaging, in climate change discussions and actions, because we all need to hold hands in this movement, basically. Yeah. So my vision and how I see it is, honestly, I think women are just like ready to go. I feel we've been underestimated of the power of women, engaging them in the last decade on climate change discussion. And I think the last 2 years we have seen, and it's going to be bigger and bigger, of women rallying up and hopefully leading the way to some of these tangible solutions.
Absolutely. I have to actually wrap this up a little bit. There seems to be a trouble with our chat box, but there was one question that came through about the partnership between One Earth and Earth's Call. So I just want to give a shout out. Earth's Call, they recently joined forces with One Earth. I think that for them, they saw this as a moment where collective action and working collectively to drive action on the ground and to drive action on climate, this is the moment. So there's, just as with Daughters of the Earth kind of joining us, and many others, across the network, kind of stepping up and committing resources and committing time and thinking collaboratively across the field. This is kind of the moment for that collective, collaborative way of instigating action. So I have to wrap it up, but thank you so much. And I appreciate everybody who took the time to be with us today. And here's to a great end of Climate Week and to plenty of actions starting as soon as we hang up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.